This is Ben Wetmore. We're here with the Gateway Pundit interviews with Mayor Longo, who is at to the Butler Trump rally. Could you tell us about yourself, sir?
My name is Jondavid Longo. I'm the mayor of Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, a district chair for the Butler County Republican Committee, and a founding member of the United Republicans of Butler County.
And you were at the rally in Butler.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Excuse me. I was at the rally, in Butler. I was a participant in the pre-program for the rally. I was given the honor of saying a few words before leading the rally in the Pledge of Allegiance. I spent a considerable amount of time backstage. Even went backstage with my wife to meet President Trump and speak with him. And as such, I was given what were supposed to have been some great seats in the front row, just left of stage. If you are the media pool looking at President Trump, you would look directly to his 3 o'clock over his right shoulder, and have seen me and my wife, Sean and Melanie Parnell, Dave McCormick, Congressman Mike Kelly, Congressman Dan Muser, all seated there right next to the barrier. So 15 feet in front of us, was the podium. 15 feet behind us was our local hero, Fire Chief Corey Compratore, who lost his life to this maniac. And it was a very sad and regrettable thing to have been a part of.
And so, I think as most people know, there was a bit of a pre-program, right? There was a Pledge of Allegiance, and there were a few other speakers, and then President Trump came on, I think roughly about 6:15. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right because um, I remember, about the placement of the sun, and I remember whenever it had all kind of come to a close. Um, I saw, I looked at my phone because it was just going wild, and it was about 7:30 at that time. So that seems about right. But to be honest with you, I don't want you to quote me on when exactly he came on because it was so much of a blur, and I don't think anybody was looking at their watch in that moment. When the president took the stage, all eyes were on him.
When did you know something was wrong?
I knew something was wrong when I heard the first crack of the gunshot, but um, the president didn't move. Nobody moved. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think that any of us, and including me, wanted to believe that was a firearm that we were hearing.
And you have
And
a background as a veteran, right?
I was in the Marine Corps. I was an infantry rifleman. I spent some time in Afghanistan. Um, so I know what firearms sound like. I know what I know what it sounds like whenever a round impacts nearby. I know what that crack sounds like, and um, it, uh, it was a sound that my ear recognized, but it was a sound that I didn't want to believe was that. Now it sounded very quiet too, and I think I might have said to someone else that I thought it sounded like a 22. And I know that might sound ridiculous to some people, but when you consider that the weapon being used was an AR-15, um, then you understand the caliber and the grain a little bit more, and not too far off from a 22 um, round. So that would explain why it was so quiet, and then that crack as well. So it was the second and third, fourth shots that rung out very quickly thereafter that really gave it away. But along with that, it was watching President Trump grab his ear and then duck. Um, that was what really, I think, gave us all the hint that this wasn't a firecracker. It wasn't a balloon pop. Um, looking back on it now too, I I remember watching a clip of Ronald Reagan in Berlin after the assassination attempt on him, and a balloon had popped while he was addressing a crowd in Berlin in Germany, and he looked up from the podium and he said, "Missed me," in the mic, and that kind of levity in that moment. I think that we expected that that's what it would be, but it wasn't, as you know. So whenever I realized what it was, that's whenever panic started to ensue around us. But the most important thing at that time was just making sure that everybody around me was safe and low to the ground. I covered my wife up who I just found out recently was pregnant. Um, and I started scanning behind me because I wasn't quite sure where those rounds were coming from. I just knew that they were coming from behind us because the rounds were going right over us. They were going quite literally, like not only through the bleachers behind us where Corey Comparatori was, but in the direction of the president. And at first, I thought, God forbid, there was somebody inside there seated behind us with a gun. Um, but then again, that sound that I recognized didn't sound like something that would have been fired from a concealed pistol. Rather, it sounded like something that was coming from a long distance. And again, I recognize that too because you can kind of hear that whiz of the.
Do you remember how many gunshots you heard?
To be quite honest with you, I only for certain know that I heard three from the gunman, and then eventually I heard a larger boom, which in my mind I knew was the return fire on the gunman from a law enforcement professional who was there to do just that. That was, of course, a much larger caliber weapon. But I remember it went, like tap, 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 and it was in that 2 and 3 that the realization set in. There wasn't much time between the first one and the second, but there was a lull, maybe even like 2 seconds, but it wasn't enough to really quite register. And, despite being a Marine and being in combat situations, when you're at home, and keep in mind, I've been home, since 2011 was the last time I was in Afghanistan. So, I'm still vigilant, still cautious, I'd like to think. But the fact of the matter is that, you're not primed in that moment when you're at home and at a rally like this, where President Donald J. Trump and a bunch of other members of government, are in attendance. You just don't think that could have been a possibility in 2024 and in Butler County, which is this staunch red conservative county that adores Donald Trump. We've adored Donald Trump since he came down the Golden Escalator in 2015. Never would I have thought that Butler County was going to be the place where he was greeted by a gunman. But unfortunately, that was the case. So after scanning behind us and realizing that the gunman wasn't inside and confirming that, I started to take a knee to assess a little bit more of that situation. My eyes kept scanning, over the crowd, just making sure again that the people around me, including my family members, because you have to understand, not only did I have my wife with me, but I had my in-laws, my sister, and my mother who were there. But I didn't know this at the time, but my mother had actually left the stadium shortly before because it was hot and she wanted to go to the car to sit in the AC for a little bit. And they were seated very close to me. I mean, they were still about, 12, 15 feet away, but they were actually more so in front of the president's podium. So with all the time I was spending backstage, I didn't get eyes on them. I just saw my sister. So she was about 15 feet away from me. So my eyes kept going to her as well. I was telling everybody to get low and keep their heads down. A lot of folks, it was amazing the steadfastness of folks in that moment. And maybe it was because of a disbelief or a shock, but many people just continued. They just stayed standing or put out their phones to record. And maybe they didn't quite understand exactly what was going on immediately. And I just, I remember thinking to myself how odd it was because we were yelling. And by the way, Sean and Melanie Parnell were directly next to me. And so Sean Parnell was also, yelling, get down, stay down. We don't know where the shooter is. We don't know if there's a second one. And so we're trying to plead with people to please get down and stay still to allow law enforcement officers and the Secret Service to one, find this threat, and two, neutralize it as quickly as possible without us being in the way and creating more chaos. After that, during that, I want to say Rico Elmore, and I'm not exactly sure where he was seated, but I do know that he was seated behind me. I don't know if he was in the row directly behind me or 2 rows behind me, but he was closer to Corey Comparatori than I was. So he sprung into action and jumped over the barriers that were right behind us to the bleachers to get to the stands to assist. in trying to offer first aid to Corey, but unfortunately, Corey was gone, and uh, shortly after they had moved Corey to the medical tent behind the bleachers. When evacuation started and people were finally being prompted to move out of the bleachers, at that point, I just thought it was most important to keep asking people, please, not to rush, not to push, do not run. I don't know how many people were there, but I'm guessing there were somewhere in the range of 25,000 people. I don't know if you've heard a number, but the only reason I say that is because I was asking around, and I kept hearing mixed numbers. I heard 20,000, I heard 25, I heard even upwards to 30. But what I do know is there were certainly 20,000 people there. My fear was a stampede was going to crush and, God forbid, kill people who were still laying on the ground
Right.
looking for cover. So I have to commend everybody around me who was calm, and they were agreeable to instruction in that moment. They didn't shove and push one another. And I saw a lot of people step up in that moment and help. I understand that a little later, and somebody sent me the footage, but I didn't really have a great memory of it until I saw it, of a lady that we were carrying around the bleachers to the medical tent too. So that's what I spent my time doing after I made sure that my family was safe, and my father-in-law took my wife and my sister and my mother-in-law back to toward the vehicles during the evacuation, and I stuck around just to help in any way I could, hoping that I could offer a hand to law enforcement officers or first responders who, in that moment, I was sure needed an extra set of hands. And
Sure.
look, we all just tried to do our part, sir, and that's really it. My story is not special. I didn't do anything special. I think I did what any father or husband would do in that moment out of concern for their loved ones. And I saw so many others stepping up to the plate to do just that in that time.
Sure. What was you what was the reaction? What did you hear when you saw Trump get back up?
It was it was incredible. And then, so I have to say, like, it was just a weird set of emotions, right? Because at first it was a feeling of relief that my family was okay, and that my friends around me were okay. I had a lot of friends around me, people that I work with, colleagues of mine, and to see them alive, but then also see the scene behind me of Corey Comparatori, who had passed away, and the aftermath of that, I um, saw that folks felt relief, but there was also that sadness. And then, excuse me, because I'm trying to recount this right now.
Sure.
You play it, but then when President Trump stood up again, weird set of emotions. It was pure like elation in that moment. It was relief. It was, thank God they didn't kill him. Um, it was inspirational. He stood up. He wrangled his arms from the Secret Service to stick his head out and raise his fist in what I've been describing as a triumphant defiance to let everybody know, which, by the way, I think was totally appropriate. I've heard some people say that they didn't think that was appropriate and that they thought he was putting others in danger by doing that and putting Secret Service in danger by doing that. But I'm going to tell you, the burden of leadership is so heavy that in that moment, you must think of others. And what he did was he stood up to the occasion, or met the occasion rather, stood up to the plate to lead by example from the front during horror and facing extreme adversity himself, even having been grazed and just missed by a bullet that very well could have killed him. He showed us all strength and resilience, and it was a message, But again, hard to reconcile with those feelings I just described to you while also
Sure.
considering Corey. And then you have to understand too, I didn't know who else had been hurt, but people, at least from our perspective, I think that it's forgotten that those rounds that were going past us had to go past the president and go somewhere. So
Yeah.
I wasn't sure at this point where they had landed, but there were another set of bleachers on the exact opposite side of President Trump. And I remember just thinking how awful, and what I could only imagine was the horrible aftermath of that on the other side. I was really hoping that nobody else had lost their lives. I came to find out, of course, that there were a few people who were very seriously injured, who
Right.
for a few days, for a few days, their families were not certain that they were going to make it and pull through. And I understand one of those individuals was in their 70s, or is in their 70s. So, even scarier to think um, about how vulnerable that individual was. My goodness, just it was just an awful thing to be a part of. If I could redo that day over 1,000 times over, I never, ever, ever would have, not one of those times, brought my family with me into that situation. And so
Right.
I regret now. The reason I say that is because I regret now that the reason why I'm speaking to you now, and the reason why Butler County, Pennsylvania is on the lips of everybody around the globe, is because of this, and not because of all the good things that Butler County has to offer, not because of the good citizens of Butler County and what they bring um, to the table in many different ways. So, I just hope that one, everybody is thinking of and praying for the family of Fire Chief Comparatori, and the family members of those who are injured. I pray that folks are just praying for healing and unity over this country right now, and um, an end to dehumanizing, debasing your neighbor based on their political affiliation. Uh,
Sure. Sure.
I can't tell you what the motive of this gunman was, but I can tell you, having been
Neither
in
can the
Republican.
FBI.
Right, right, right. And but I can tell you this, it's clear to all of us that he obviously wasn't a fan of Donald J. Trump. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken a shot at him or his rally goers.
Right.
And two, um, I said to MSNBC, and I'll say it here: I'm not blaming Democrats for this. I'm not blaming the left for this. What I am saying is that I really hope that the regular vitriolic and hateful speech that we oftentimes hear come from folks on the left side of the aisle, and I'm talking about people with large voices who say some really scary things about President Trump and his supporters. Things like, if President Trump wins, then we're going to have our democracy dismantled, or if President Trump wins, then a theocratic fascist state where women have no rights is going to be established. And I, uh, I, to hear people say that continuously, it's not far fetched to believe that people would then take that to dehumanize and debase President Trump and his followers, and be motivated to do something to this effect. So I just hope that that kind of vitriol isn't responsible for motivating this attack. And I hope that this is a learning opportunity, that folks are going to be able to reel it in a little bit.
Right. Did you see
So,
the shooter at any point?
no, well, no, no, I didn't. I can't say that I did see, but uh, I saw the rooftop, and I was pointed in the direction after this had all been done. I think I may have gotten a glimpse of him laying in the prone, but at that point he would have been, um, the Secret Service had already neutralized him,
Yeah.
and he was already dead. So if I did see him, then it was him lifeless on that rooftop right behind us. And
Sure.
again, I just want to say um, how awful, again, it was just to be there. And I wish, I wish they hadn't come to that, sir. Just wish they hadn't come to that.
Sure. So you were in the VIP section, obviously, as a local mayor, as an elected official. Would you say there were about 200 people in that section, kind of in the core around Trump? Like,
Uh,
how big was that group?
do you mean including all of those who are around Trump in the bleachers, both behind and to the left and right of him, or just in my section where I was seated?
Yeah, kind of the all the sections around him. It's kind of hard, I think, from the photographs to get a perception of like really how many people were kind of in that danger zone right around him.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's hard to say.
Sure.
In the section that, so again, if you're the media pool, and you're looking directly at the president, you saw the bleachers right behind him. They had bleachers that were identical, except that they were more abbreviated, canted to the left and right of the stage, looking at his left and right shoulder. So I would say in that bleacher, every bit of 100 people were sitting in that bleacher, certainly close to. And then in our section on the ground seats where we were seated, it wouldn't be ridiculous to think that there were another 75 to 100 people there. So I would say 200 people is a good assessment. And everybody was seated in very close proximity to one another.
Sure.
So it's amazing to think, and I can't help but keep wondering, how close were those bullets to another? Did
Sure.
somebody else just barely escape with their life? How close were they to me and my wife?
Right.
Because we could hear them. How close were they to my in-laws, to my friends to the left and right and behind me? It's something that you keep asking yourself, and again, it's a weird mix of emotions. It's thank God we're okay, thank God my loved ones are okay, and it's also a little bit of maybe I don't know what you want to call it, survivor's guilt. I'm not sure,
A
but
mix of emotions.
yeah, certainly.
What did it sound like? You mentioned hearing them.
Yeah, it was. So I don't know if you fired weapons before, sir, but especially at a distance, it was a mix of. And keep in mind, we're in like a fishbowl. There are metal bleachers around us, so it's really hard to describe that sound. But you hear that, and that was kind of the after effect of the shot. But then you hear the snap, and all I can describe it to people who haven't heard a round of that caliber impacting in their vicinity, their general vicinity, is that it sounds like it's reminiscent of the little snappers that one would get as a child that you throw on the sidewalk during Independence Day celebrations. It's very much like a and a quick pop, and a hiss almost. It's strange, and it's really strange to hear those sounds, having been home from a place like Afghanistan since 2011. I never thought I would hear those sounds again. I never
Sure.
thought I would be on the receiving end of gunfire again
Sure.
in my life.
Sure.
So I'm just so sad that everybody around me had to experience that, because I think it's one thing for those of us who have experienced that to experience that. But it's an entirely other thing for people who are here at home to be subjected to that and have to endure that kind of feeling. It's not one that I ever would have wanted my family um, to experience. And I think that most of us who join the military are hopeful that by us joining and going to serve in places like Afghanistan, that our family members would never have to even consider what it would sound like or feel like to have incoming fire. Um, land around them. So again, I'm just so sorry to everyone that they had to experience this.
Sure. The when you showed up, a lot of people relate that they had to spend a lot of time going through security. Was there one access point to get into the facility?
From what I remember, there was a giant line, and that
Sure.
line um, led to metal detectors and police and Secret Service agents who were checking pockets, making sure that folks weren't coming in with oversized bags, or even bottles of water were told to be thrown away. We got wanded, or I saw
Do
some people get wanded. Yeah, for sure. And
you
and
remember where that was at the airport?
it's difficult for me to. We were at the Butler Farm Show, sir. We were at the airport in 2020,
Yeah.
um, and but it's difficult for me to say where exactly that was, because um,
Was it on the
I,
north
I
side, kind of on Buttercup Road?
well, so I entered through Buttercup Road, sir, but then
Okay.
I would walk north. You would walk north through the field where we all parked and into the venue gates.
Yep.
And then once you were in there, you had to get in a security line. So I would say it was actually, I wish I had a map on me right now, but it was on the direct opposite side from where we we were all parking and where we were entering from Buttercup Road. Um, and it kind of wrapped around the perimeter
Hmm.
in a way, from my memory. And you have to forgive me, please, because
Okay.
it was almost 90 degrees. I was wearing a suit and tie. There's a lot of excitement. Had tons of people just coming up to say hello. We're all hugging and kissing and
Sure.
shaking hands and talking about the last time he came to visit in Halloween night in 2020, and just how excited we were to experience that again. And then I spent a lot of my time backstage in preparation for the pre-program,
Sure.
and then again in preparation for and during my meeting with the president. So um,
Were you the mayor in 2020, the
I
previous?
was,
Oh,
yeah, I
that's great.
was, and I
Did
got
you?
to lead the I got to lead the Pledge of Allegiance then
Oh,
too.
that's great.
It
That's
was a
great.
great honor. About 60,000 people at that rally. It was one of President Trump's largest rallies that he's ever held, which is a huge point of pride for us in Butler County because Donald J. Trump is known for his rallies.
Sure.
Nobody does a rally like Donald J. Trump. I even had friends just went to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they said that the announcer had told them that there were 23,000 people in that crowd. And I thought to myself, wow, you multiply that by three and you have a Donald J. Trump rally. Not even the Red Hot Chili Peppers could compete with this guy. And I thought how cool it was that Butler County was able to carry that standard and say we were one of the largest rallies that the president had ever put on. And what an honor it was for him to come back to visit us again.
Sure. Did you notice anything different about the security between 2020 and this year?
I don't like to comment on the security measures. I'm not a law enforcement professional, so I'm going to leave it to other law enforcement professionals to make these determinations. But
Sure.
what I can tell you is that at the Butler Airport in 2020, the venue was a lot more closed off. There were a lot of airplane hangars around us, and there were law enforcement agents and Secret Service agents on from what my memory is, and forgive me because it's been 4 years, but I remember there being teams on every one of those hangars around us. Um, all of those buildings were covered. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't, if you compare that to the Butler Farm Show, you're out in the middle of a field. There's a major artery for vehicle traffic that's circles just outside of the venue. So um, lots of openness, we'll say. It's just a very open venue. But again, um, driving into that place, you saw the place was riddled with police officers and Secret Service agents and orderly attendees. So, despite all that, or excuse me, considering all of that, I think that everybody thought again, there's just no way that this could be gunfire. How would it be possible that somebody could fire into this venue, um, or even be able to get to a point where you could fire into this venue with all of the great many law enforcement agents that were around? It's just I know that everybody's mind is boggled on this right now, so um, I just am looking forward to hearing an answer from whoever, the FBI, the Secret Service, anybody that can give me some facts so that I can um, try to steer away from forming an uneducated opinion on the security measures of the day.
Yeah.
But I can tell you too that on the ground in the venue, sir, I have to say this: security I thought was tight to get in the venue. We went through metal detectors. There were tons of law enforcement agents and first responders that were there, Secret Service agents, from what I can remember. But again, I went backstage, so I might have seen a lot more than the average person did because I was in a more secured area. Um, and I want to say too, I want to take this time to commend law enforcement and the Secret Service in that moment, whenever it did happen, because they did act quickly and they showed us concern. They showed us concern throughout the whole day. They were handing everybody bottles of water as quickly as they could. They were helping people if anybody had suffered from a faint or heat stroke. They were helping get people to medical tent, and they acted swiftly in that moment when the shooting began. So I just want to take this time to recognize um, those who were on the ground with us in the venue for uh, doing their duty to us to protect and serve.
Right. Right. No, and there were a lot of people to protect that day for sure. I mean, it's tough to protect thousands, tens of thousands of people in any venue in any circumstances. Um, the so when you went in, through security, how long did it take? We heard from some people who said, it was a multi-hour line, and as you described, I mean, it was hard to get through security. Did you notice any difference between the VIP entrance and the general admission entrance in terms of
Um,
screening?
First, I want to be very clear here too that the Trump campaign never even uses the term VIP. So there's the expedited entry
Sure.
line, and
Thank you.
so I just want to draw that distinction because I think it gives the wrong impression of the Trump campaign and what they stand for. That
Right.
everybody's a VIP at a Trump rally. So I'll say that. Second, the expedited entry line wasn't any different from the general admission line, only in that it was shorter because there were less individuals with expedited entry. And the purpose of that was to allow for anybody, so folks like me who were speaking and had to be somewhere at a specific time to be able to get through that line more quickly. Now, that's not to say more quickly in that there were less security measures for me to go through. I just didn't have to wait in quite as long of a line, if that makes any sense. I still went through metal detectors just the same. I had to empty my pockets and do everything that was asked of me. I had to throw my bottle of water out. So no preferential treatment was given to anybody that I saw, at least around me in the expedited line, sir.
Right. And then that entrance on Buttercup Road, that was right next to the glass company, the AJR, American Glass Research.
Yeah,
Is
and
that right?
there's a large church on that road as well that was very close to the entrance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, do you have anything else you'd want to add or anything else you think is important?
Um, I said this to some. I said this in my first interview with Fox News, uh, and again, I didn't quite remember it, but somebody told me that um, I had a lady actually. She was so emotional. I saw her on the floor of the RNC yesterday, and she was telling me about how she was listening to that and how I said that this was the act of a godless society, and that I think that I hope that people are praying and that the sooner we turn to God in this nation, the sooner we can get away from this kind of lunacy and hopefully prevent something like this from ever happening again. We need to put God back in the equation.
Amen. Amen.
And thank you, sir.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mayor,
you.
and we will be in touch.